Sink me into the shadow that isn't life or death. Bag after bag of blood that staves off death, but also keeps me from gathering the crumbs that are left of my consciousness. I've always had this book on my TBR, but I wanted to start reading it, especially after I finished reading Pedro Paramo by Juan Rulfo. So, both are Latin American writers, both talk about just the themes of power, suppression, memory, death. Basically, stories that are all those things, but at the same time, they feel very gothic, very disturbing, very nightmarish, sort of like a fever dream. History blended in with politics, and even myth. So that's exactly what this book is about, which is The Obscene Bird of Night by Juan Rulfo. Oh, Obscene Bird of Night by Jose Donoso. The Obscene Bird of Night is one of the strangest, most disturbing novels I've ever read. If you've read and enjoyed works like House of Leaves by Mark Danielewski, and even The Face of Another by Kobo outside of Gothic Latin American writers, those if you've loved those books, you will definitely enjoy this one. And the thing about this book is that Donoso is not simply narrating the story. He is not simply writing it. He is not capturing, he is not documenting the lives of his characters. It feels as if he is pulling himself and you, the reader, into the madness that is contained within the walls of this book. It gets to such a grotesque point where you don't realize where the book actually began and even where you started reading it, at what point in the story you started reading the book, because it feels endless. When I picked this book up, I was fully aware that the characters in this book are nightmarish and completely unstable. They are trapped inside their own unsettling and dark personalities and identities, shaped by the world of myth, shaped by symbols, superstition, beliefs, religion, and completely absent from the world of the living. And reading this page after page after page, I soon started to lose grip on what's normal, lose my own sense of what's normal when you think about reality, time, and even self and identity. This book is about loss. It's about loss of identity, loss of the body, loss of control. And Donoso's writing reminds me of so many other writers who have done something so similar, although you cannot compare Donoso's fiction with any other writer. It does remind me a lot of Kafka, even the horrors of Lovecraft, the metafictionality of Borges, the narrative being aware of its own mortality, so to speak, and even a little bit like the morbidity of William Faulkner. This book is magical realism, but it's gothic, it's historical, it's political, it's so many things. Donoso has just broken all rules of fiction writing. By the end of the novel, he is no longer the writer of the book. He too becomes a part of this book. He is haunted and consumed and shaded by just the twisted minds of the characters that he has created. One of the most unforgettable things about this book is how it constructs physical prisons, as in to keep certain people away from others, but also creating psychological and existential prisons. The air is so thick and slippery and suffocating. He uses locked doors, he uses decaying bodies, he uses disease, old age, the imbunche. The imbunche, who's this mythical creature who is sewn shut. All the orifices of this creature are sewn shut. So it's this horrific imagery of silence itself that haunts you. And then there are these dingy and dark corridors, sealed rooms, mirrors, silence. There's so much wrought decay and degradation, not only related to objects but also to the human body. There are bodies that lose shape, there are bodies that become deformed, some even become formless, some turn into inanimate objects. Donoso uses a lot of these things, especially deformity, as a metaphor. So he's basically showing a reality that society does not want to acknowledge the existence of. Things rotting and decaying and weakening and eventually disappearing into obscurity, bringing forth a very provocative image of what it means to be silenced in so many different ways. There's a very interesting dialogue here also between what's normal and what's not. and how those definitions are set and by whom. So when you think of gender, social class, power, identity, and so much more, there is this whole imagery where a normal human body is considered and perceived as absurd, because one of the main intentions of this novel is to deceive and to disguise. Nothing is as it appears to be, and what is normal in the book is considered grotesque, and what is grotesque is written as something that is perfectly normal, and that sort of disorients you as the reader. You think they're only disguised as what they appear to be. Take off their disguises and they're reduced to people like me, without faces or features, who have to go rummaging in trash cans and forgotten attic trunks and picking up the cast offs of others in the streets in order to put together one disguise one day, another disguise the next, in order to give themselves an identity, if only for a few moments. They don't even have masks, there's a shortage of them. I don't understand how you can go on believing in such a stingy God who created so few masks. There are so many of us who go around collecting here and there whatever cast off enables us to disguise ourselves and feel like we're somebody, be somebody. Knowing how to change disguises and melt into their fluid existence that bestows the freedom of never being the same. Because rags are never permanent. Everything being improvised, everything fluctuating. Today I'm myself, and tomorrow no one can find me, not even I myself, because you're what you are only for as long as the disguise lasts. Sometimes I feel sorry for persons like you, who are so enslaved to one face and one name and one function and one station in life, to the clinging mask you'll never be able to shed, to the oneness that holds you prisoner in a single identity. I saw this in an interview with the translator of this book, Megan McDowell. So the interviewee, who's another author, said that you need to step away from this book in order to touch grass, because your sense of reality gets completely shaken. It breaks into a million pieces, and that's a very accurate description of what you feel as a reader. Another thing, the way that this book handles women in old age is equally haunting. Women in this novel are reduced to their bodily functions, so they're reduced as they're merely perceived as reproductive vessels. They are discarded as useless once they grow old. They are turned into these monstrous mythical creatures. They are silenced, pitied, feared, always kept away from the world of the living. Old age in this book isn't something that is redemptive. It isn't a peaceful period in a person's life. It's something that is another kind of prison. That's the thing. Donoso has created prisons out of each and every aspect of life and sort of twisted and molded it in a way that feels even more dark and grotesque, almost like a horror novel. And old age here is portrayed more like a curse than a natural process. It is a kind of death before death. He makes this even more interesting and deeply layered and intense when he draws from Chilean folklore and even superstition. It reminded me of John Reese's White Sargasso Sea and even Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, just the way that they treat old women as being trapped between myth and memory, completely turned into monsters by time itself. It does feel like you're reading Lovecraft and Borges, but also it's a lot more raw and darker than that and more chaotic, but it's a very controlled kind of chaos. And also, what's also more interesting, and the reason why I say Borges, because of the experimental narrative, it's obviously non-linear, but there are moments where the story breaks the fourth wall of storytelling and becomes aware of its own existence. It becomes aware that it's a book that is narrating itself. For it to be read like that by you, the reader, feels even more chilling and vivid. And this book is not meant to be understood in a single read. The narration is very slippery. He changes the narrator mid-sentence, so that can feel quite disorienting. It's like a maze, it's a fever dream, it's a body horror novel, it is a political metaphor on how society marginalizes the weak and the unwanted. It can also be read as a psychological study on memory, identity, horror. In the translator note at the end of the book, Megan McDowell wrote that nothing can prepare you for this book. In The Obscene Bird of Night, Donoso found a language to bring the reader inside a dark consciousness. It is also acutely a portrait of Donoso himself. It's a deeply personal read when you read about his own life and what preceded the creation of this book, which makes it deeply disturbing and even more hallucinatory, because he took details from his own life and his own experiences and drew them and twisted them into caricatures that really stand out in the book. And just like its unreliable narrator, it's always pulling you in different directions. I didn't write this novel, the novel wrote me. So this is Donoso. This is the introduction, which was written by Alejandro Zambra. In this novel, I think I go off the leash completely, and what interests me is chasing down the ghosts, or not chasing ghosts, but finding out what is ghost and what is me. How can I put it? I wrote this novel a little to find out who I am. Something really disturbing, but also something that really helps add another layer to this story is that so Donoso had written his diaries and he had told his daughter to write a biography for him, and but to only refer to those diaries and the whole archive of those diaries 10 years after he had died. And that's exactly what his daughter did. She read his diaries 10 years after he had passed away. And in the diaries, one of the entries of the diaries was the idea of a story that Donoso had come up with, which is the story of a girl who reads her father's diaries and kills herself right after that. That's exactly what Donoso's daughter also did. After she read his diaries, after she wrote his biography, I believe, which is supposed to be a very beautiful but devastating book, and I don't think it's translated yet in English, she killed herself. Anyway, that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy this book as much as I did. Also, please let me know if you've read any book that feels just as dark and chaotic and messy as this one, because I really want to read more books like these. Yeah, I'll see you guys next time.